breathing, hearing, sensing sensations. All of these only happen in the present moment. We don't breathe yesterday's breaths or tomorrow's. And the same with sound and sensation. Only alive right here, right now. And of course, as soon as you set the intention to be present, what happens? The mind wanders away into the past or the future. And that's how it works. It just often happens that way. And all that's needed is to be mindful, to be aware of it, and then you can rejoice you're right here again. And just by coming here and doing this together, we're deepening awareness. And the more energy we give, the more effort we make to be present and awake, the more energy it brings. And remembering you can always shift your body back about an inch, especially when you're lost in thought. Simply stepping back into this posture of receptivity, not leaning forward into thoughts of the future or past, but just shifting the body back, maybe an inch or so. If you're lying down, just relaxing into maybe one more deeper layer of relaxation, just feeling the body, receiving the moment, receiving the breath, the sounds of life, the dance of sensation in the body. So before I begin to speak, I just wanted to say once again, I am looking for a couple of volunteers. Ava volunteered, but it would be nice to have at least one more to help me with a scanning project. I would like to take these, piles of Dharma talks and articles and just teachings that I've gathered over the years and get them scanned well before I have to move. Uh, and if anybody wants to help with that, you would come over here and I'd show you the stuff, and you're welcome to, keep any of it you want afterwards and use it if you want. So you can just put in the chat if you might be interested in helping with that project. Yes, so today, building on last week's talk about dedication, I just want to talk about just some different ways of being dedicated in our practice. And before we really, talk a lot more about dedication, it's helpful to decide for yourself what you want to be dedicated to. And in the tradition that we practice here and that we come from, we're really dedicated to living as compassionate and awake a life as possible. But it's very helpful to pause and to reflect on what is your highest intention, which maybe you had a chance to do a little bit as we sit. And feel free, if you came up with anything that you'd like to share, feel free to put it in the chat. We're very chat positive here in this group, so feel free to use the chat. And Jack loves this poem of Diane Ackerman's, and I'm going to just read it to you because I think it's sort of a beautiful prayer. It's part of a longer poem. She says, "In the name of the daybreak and the eyelids of morning and the wayfaring moon and the night when it departs, I swear I will not dishonor my soul with hatred, but offer myself humbly as a guardian of nature, as a healer of misery, as a messenger of peace. In the name of the sun and its mirrors, and the day that embraces it, and the cloud veils drawn over it, and the uttermost night, and the plants bursting with seed, and the crowning seasons of the firefly and the apple, I will honor all life." This is her prayer. "I will honor all life, wherever and in whatever form it may dwell, on earth, my home, in the mansions and in the mansions of the stars." So that's a beautiful and very, she's a wonderful writer, very poetic statement of her intention. And then a more practical one from E.B. White. He said, "Sometimes I wake up in the morning not knowing whether to save the world or savor it." And, I'd like to propose that they're not in opposition, those things. That because we savor the world, because we take this time to practice together, to be as present as we can, as awake and compassionate as we can, that actually brings enjoyment and savoring of the world. I don't see those things in opposition at all. Years ago, I took a group to India on a pilgrimage to travel to see some of the sites where the Buddha was born and first taught and passed away. And when we were in Bodh Gaya, where he actually, where he was born, where he got enlightened, where he first taught, and then where he passed away. And we were in Bodh Gaya, which is in northern India, in a very poor province, in the Bihar province. And Bodh Gaya is kind of like the belly button of the Buddhist universe. It's really the center because that's where the Buddha had this profound experience of understanding the causes of suffering and the way out of suffering. And there's a stupa there, and people come and they circumambulate the stupa and they offer prayers. Sometimes they do prostrations all the way around the stupa. It's a very lively and colorful scene. Um, and so this year I had taken a group, and we happened to be in Bodh Gaya on New Year's, which was, I thought, auspicious. And the young Karmapa, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, was giving teachings, and we went to hear him teach. And one of the things that, excuse me, that he talked about, some of it was, you know, maybe not so outstanding. It was very ordinary teaching, but that made it actually more applicable and practical to our actual lives. And one of the things that he talked about was how to use the obstacles that come up inevitably as soon as you set your intention. I mean, you can see it if you decide to, I don't know, even go on a diet and lose some weight. Immediately, you just crave that hot fudge sundae or whatever it is you crave. Anytime you decide to let things go, there can be this wave of regret or resistance to it. So he was talking about how these obstacles, these things that get in our way or that we imagine are in our way of our practice, can be used as a ladder, as a way to grow and grow in love and understanding. And he was saying, don't laugh at these hindrances in your practice. Don't normalize them. Well, I actually do like to normalize them because I feel like when we normalize the difficult emotions that come up in our lives, the things that we like to hide, maybe like shame or intense aversion or hate or other things that we might not be very proud of feeling, when we normalize those hindrances, those are all manifestations of ill will. When we normalize them, we actually take away some of the shame or self-consciousness around them, and we can be present with them more easily. So I think normalizing is important, but what he's saying is don't stop there. Don't just normalize, oh yeah, I hate so and so, and that's normal. Human beings sometimes hate each other. You can notice it and be aware of it, but don't stop there. See if you can apply an antidote to that feeling. And it might be patience, and it might be having some compassion for yourself for feeling that way, even for the other person for acting in the way that makes you feel aversion towards them. Um, and using these kinds of experiences as a ladder for spiritual growth, I think, is a reframe that I really love. So instead of being dismayed that we're having this or that hindrance arise constantly in our meditation, this or that conflict arise in our daily life, when these are teachings about how to, they say in the Tibetan tradition, how to mix the teachings with our everyday life, but they're really talking about integrating them and using them in our everyday life. And so, for example, um, you could say when we're overcome with a really intense emotion, instead of an emotion that's just impossible to control, right? You just can't. Being mindful, being aware, you do all the things you know how to do. You feel it in your body, but it's just too intense, right? It just is too strong. And then you can even see how it's affecting your perception of yourself, your perception of your world. You can be aware of all of that. But then what? Um, he's saying, the Karmapa was saying, the more intense the obstacle, the more gratitude you should have for it. He didn't put it quite in those words, but basically he was saying you can use it to then apply some of the teachings of loving kindness and compassion, the Brahma Viharas that we've practiced here a lot together. And this isn't only his teaching. This is a general teaching that uh, my first teacher, the Korean Zen master, Desant Sanim, he used to say, and I've shared this with you, he used to say, a bad situation is a good situation. And that's what he was talking about, that when you find yourself suffering in some sort of bad situation, um, you're actually more inclined to try to work with it and understand it and practice with it, even if the wish is to just make it go away. Of course, we know that we have to go a little more mindful than just wanting to make it go away. But he was also saying a good situation can be a bad situation because we coast and we don't feel the need particularly to dive deep into this practice. And Ajahn Chah, Jack's teacher, used to say the same thing, and Ajahn Sumedho's teacher and others. He used to say, where do you learn the most? When it's easy or when it's hard? You know, what teaches you about yourself and about life the most? Um, and and you can pause for a minute, actually just pause. Let's just pause for a minute right here. And you can ask yourself, like, what are the big obstacles that you feel or that you see or that you imagine in your life? And just taking a moment to ask yourself. And then just see if you can see anything that it might be wanting to teach you, you know, or show you. I think in all the traditions, obstacles are considered of tremendous value, actually, in just this way. Sometimes people even pray for obstacles. You know, grant that I will be given enough difficulty that the great heart of compassion will open in me. There's one actually I want to read to you. Hang on a second. I have to get the book. This is on page 74 of The Wise Heart. It's a Rumi poem. And he's writing about a priest who prays for thieves and muggers on the streets. Like, why would he pray for thieves and muggers on the streets, right? And he says, because they have done me such generous favors, every time I turn toward the things that they want, I run into them. In other words, every time I crave, you know, money or material things that they might steal, I run into the thieves and muggers. They beat me and they leave me in the road. And I understand again that what they want is not what I want. Those that make you return, for whatever reasons, to the Spirit, be grateful to them. Worry about the others who give you so much delicious comfort. Well, I embroidered that. That give you delicious comfort that keeps you from prayer. It's an interesting perspective, isn't it? And we can understand it metaphorically, obviously, you know, that how many times have we looked for love in all the wrong places and left feeling, you know, beat up, lying in the road? Or how many times have we longed for something and then when we get it, it's just not that great, actually. It's not that deeply satisfying. And then we understand again what they want is not what I want, what you and I want. Um, One of my favorite saints, Therese of Lisieux, I visited her cathedral in Lisieux, and so I'm going to say this in French, but then I'll translate it for you. She said, "L'amour ne se révèle que L'amour ne se révèle que d'une traversée de tout ce qui l'empêche," which means love doesn't reveal itself except when you're traversing everything that gets in its way that prevents it. So I think we can experience joy amidst difficulties, because we can realize that's the place, that's the pay dirt in the practice, right? That's the place where we can really fulfill our intention to be dedicated to this practice. And that it's not a grim duty that you have to do to get somewhere else than where you are. That where you are is enough to have an open-hearted movement through the world, just as you are, right where you are. And to say yes to all of this and to be able to live with that intention of presence and compassion for the world, well, this is what we're doing here. I have a quote that I want to read to you, my last, I think. No, I have one last one after this at the very end. This is a quote I really love from Leonard Cohen. And he's talking about his songwriting here. And he says, a lot of those songs are just the response to whatever struck me as beauty. Whatever that curious emanation from a being or an object or a situation or a landscape. That had a very powerful effect on me, as it does on everyone. And so I prayed to have some response to those things that were so clearly beautiful to me, and they were alive. Whether you make art or not, I think we all want to have, some response to the beauty of this life, and that is alive in us. Do we pray in Buddhism? Do we pray in Buddhist practice when we have no concept? It's not a theistic religion based on praying to God. And without going deep into that question, I just want to say that whether you pray to God or not, or pray to something or not, I definitely pray. I don't pray to God or to Buddha or to a specific entity or being, but I pray to open, to ask so that I might receive some intuition or some guidance. And I love this quote from Sasaki Roshi, who was actually a disgraced Zen teacher at the end of his life for engaging in lots of sexual misconduct with his students. However, he was also at the same time a profound and deep teacher. He said, in our practice, we believe that God has already done their part, and our practice is to awaken to what we have been given. I really love that. I'm going to read it again because it's like, in our practice, we believe that God has already done their part, and our practice is to awaken to what has been given. And of course, there's lots of different kinds of prayer. There's beseeching prayer, asking for the healing of somebody that you love. And there's all kinds of prayer. But I think we can actually say that mindfulness is a prayer. Mindfulness itself is a prayer. Because when we are being mindful, we're making room for reality as it is. We're stepping back from our agendas for it and our thoughts about it and our wishes that it would be this way or that. We step back from all of that and we're making room for however it is right now. And that is being present. And that is also being present to the mystery of life and to what's been given to us. And I often sometimes say this prayer, not my will, but thine. And it isn't that I've personified the thine or the they or it's just that I'm trying to say, I know what I want, but I actually don't always know if that's the best thing or how to get there. And I am willing to surrender. This is like I think the third step in the 12-step programs, turning my life and my will over to God, or turning my life and my will over to um, whatever is our highest understanding of spirit, God, love, our hearts, and turning my life and my will, not my head's will, but my heart. Your higher power. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. I should know. I spent 4 years in intensive Al Anon. I should know. But that was a long time ago. And then I also want to share with you that last night I went to the annual benefit for IACT, the small but mighty anti-genocide group that several of our InsightLA teachers, including myself, have accompanied to visit refugee camps. I went to eastern Chad, right on the border of Sudan, but they also have been working in Central African Republic, in Artsakh with that war, Armenia, with the refugees in Greece, with refugees in, well, really so many places in the world. Uh, and it was amazing last night because Umda, the community leader of the Darfuri refugees, who are, oh, maybe 350,000 of them amassed in 12 camps spread out along the border of Chad and Sudan. They brought Umda to the States. Umda's on the board of IACT and really makes the work in Africa possible through his leadership. And, Umda is living in the camp. Everybody is malnourished. There is no medical care. And he's talked about what it is like to watch your child be sick and not to be able to get medicine for them. Or if you can travel and find some medicine, you don't have the money, enough money to buy that medicine and to watch your child perhaps die. And the agony of that. And there's so many things like that. But I kept thinking, what is it like for him? I hope they don't take him into a supermarket where he can see, 25 kinds of crackers. And I mean, it's just such an abundance of food of all different kinds. Or to a pharmacy and see all the medicines that are available. And sure, there's people who can't afford them, but most of us can. Um, and so Umda has taken the obstacles in his life. Oh, this probably make me cry. I just, anyway, Umda lost his entire extended family in the genocide. And that was 45 of his family members that he lost. This is what I would call a major obstacle in your life. And he talks about after, just all these people were killed, he looked at the people who were in front of him and said, okay, okay, these are the people who are here in my life now, and I can help them. And so he turned this tremendous obstacle into a path of love. He led over 7,000 people out of Darfur into Chad. And that is a harrowing journey because the Janjaweed followed them, raining bullets on them, and they had to only walk at night when they wouldn't be visible and find bushes and things to hide and sleep under during the day. And they went on foot for many, many, many miles, not even sure where the border was, but knowing that if they went west, they would eventually get to Chad. Um, and he talked about what it was like when my friend Gabriel Storing, he and his wife Katie J were the leaders and inspiration at IACT, and I talked to all of you before Thanksgiving. They were killed in a car accident before Thanksgiving last year. Today was their anniversary, actually. And I think the event, so they would always have the fundraiser the night before their anniversary as just a celebration of their love and what their love brought into being. Um, yeah, I had to just sob with Umda for a while. But he talked about what it was like. I mean, you can just imagine Gabriel, he was basically a social worker doing really good work here in the South Bay. And when Darfur happened, when the genocide happened, he just couldn't stand it. He said, I have to do something. And he went all by himself. He found the refugees in Eastern Chad. And having made that journey, I can tell you it is not an easy one at all. But he went there, and Umda said he was the first person ever, before or since, to ask the refugees what they wanted and to say, I will stand next to you. And then over the years, I mean, he made, I don't know, 50 trips there. And KDJ joined him. And one time they were almost killed when the rebels, came over the border. It's very dangerous there. We had to stay with UN kind of guards all the time and to leave the camp at 3 in the afternoon so we could be back at the UN compound, which was just a bunch of like trailers. If you were lucky, a trailer, if not, just a metal container with a bed in it. And that's with, guards and rifles and barbed wire, and that's where we stayed. But he talked about, and this is the message that just really blew me away last night. He said, if we want to have peace in this world, we have to find a way to live together with the people who may have murdered our mother, raped our sister, killed our brother. We have to find a way to live together in peace again. Like what happened in Rwanda. Same, they have the same koan, if you will, how to do that. And I want to end this talk with a quote from the Dalai Lama for all of us. This is from my notes I took when we were in Dharamsala a few years ago. He said, often I wonder, how can one tiny human being make a difference? But it's my responsibility, he said. It's not easy, but there is no other alternative. So each of you, please make an attempt. So each of us, please, may we make an attempt in our one tiny life that we are blessed to have. And this is what I want to share with you. I also would like to thank Caroline for being our moderator today. And Caroline, if you would be willing to put in the chat the link to IACT, I think it's just iact.ngo, but put that in the chat. And I'm going to make a pitch for the t-shirt I'm wearing. Wait a minute, I'll show you, that I bought last night. It says, can you read it? Humanity before politics. And they have long sleeved and short sleeved, and they have a lot of other beautiful t-shirts, Refugees United. And so I want to encourage you to go shopping. The holidays will come, and these shirts make beautiful gifts, and you can support, whether you can donate or not, you can support the work of IACT by buying some gifts there. And when you go on the website, just click on shop. Oh, here's
Trudy, really quick. Is it IAC or is it IACT?
IACT.
Okay, I'll just put the website link there.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, Bob, I love that. He rephrased it. He said, the more I savor the world, the more I feel dedicated to saving it. Thank you. That is beautiful. So, this is our time to have some sharing and exchange together. If you feel moved to speak or you have a question about your practice, please just raise your hand with the reaction button toward the bottom of your screen, and either Caroline will call on you and you can help you unmute, or you can unmute yourself, I think. Um, and then we can have some conversation together. I'm just writing down Bob's quote for a minute. I love that. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, I got it. I just sent it to myself. I mean, I really don't want to sound like former President Bush when he said, the way to be patriotic is to go shopping. Um, but in this case, one of the ways to be dedicated to helping the world is to go shopping at IACT. Yeah, Rick.
Trudy, could you offer some advice on how one distinguishes between being grateful when roomies, thieves, and robbers come along, and the distinction between that and negative thinking?
Can you say a little more about that question? Like, what do you mean? By the way, I always like it when you shave your beard. You look nice.
Oh, thank you. I do that occasionally. Um, I guess I'm wondering how one distinguishes between being keenly aware of when the bad news happens, um, and resisting that to a certain extent one inclines towards wearing those glasses too often. I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
Well, I think what you're talking about is reactivity, having some kind of intense reaction that's not very skillful. In other words, just getting enraged or maybe collapsing in despair or, shrinking back in fear or things like that. Is that what you're talking about?
I think that's part of it. There's also, I guess, the seduction of, can one end up training oneself to never see the good unless one can contrast it to the bad, and therefore needing the bad. I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
Well, maybe that's why we have bad. I don't know. I don't know. That's a kind of deep philosophical question, right? In a way, I mean, I think that's what you're saying. Yeah. And I really like what Charles put in the chat too. The wisdom of the Jewish religion and tradition. If you save one person, you save the world. If you want to save the world, find one person in need and start there. And it could be yourself, by the way, that you have to start there. And you'll get as much out of it as the person you help. That's certainly true. And that's also why, I was quoting the third step of the 12 steps, but that's why there's so much emphasis on service in the 12-step meetings across all the different meetings. Because, and I remember too, when I went to my first meetings, I was so just devastated and hated having to be there in those basements and just felt so resentful and blah, 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 blah. But, coming and helping set up chairs or, just doing those simple things, they're very grounding. There's just a lot of wisdom in that. And then you just see how the good and bad are intertwined and kind of make room for each other, I guess. So thank you. Caroline.
Yeah, I had a little comment too. I really loved your teaching today, Trudy. But I think sometimes like you're aware of this kind of tool or mindset shift that, okay, you're facing an adversity or an obstacle, try to find gratitude for it to kind of, or like lean into it with compassion. But sometimes I kind of feel like when I'm aware of that tool and try to use it, it seems like I'm coming through it in like an ingenuine way, in a way that I'm like, oh, let me see if I can be grateful for this, or like try to be compassionate about it. But then I'm like, I'm just doing that so like I feel better, or like I can get through it, you know?
Yeah, I do know. And I think, it's the problem also with that approach is when we're just doing it to get rid of it, it doesn't usually work that well.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, why it feels not so genuine because it actually isn't working for you when you do it that way so much. Is that correct?
Maybe, or just like it's not always, it just depends.
But the
But
thing is,
sometimes, yeah.
if you think about wanting to ease your suffering as a form of self-compassion, then it can be more genuine. Do you see what I mean? Like you just don't want to
Yeah.
keep suffering with whatever it is that you're wanting to make go away. And I think reframing it that way instead of just saying, oh, well, if you want it to go away, it won't work. That's hard because, of course, we want it to go away. But if I think of it as a kind of, or if you think of it as a kind of self compassion, of course, I want to be kind and not give myself these, heartaches or emotional storms. And sometimes they happen anyway. And I have a friend, a wonderful Tai Chi master in Boston, who used to say, sometimes it ain't a teaching, it's a bummer. And that's true too. Sometimes it just sucks, excuse my French. And that's okay too. Um, but I think really framing it as this is your kindness to yourself will help you feel more genuine about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mel.
I've been listening very carefully to what people are saying and not saying, as it were. And also, by the way, it's nice seeing Rick again. He was one of the people we miss from our Sangha. I have a difficult time going along with the idea of accepting those who have hurt us. I'm really so cynical about what's happening in the country insofar as the split between the Republicans, who I no longer see as Republicans as I used to know them, but as Trump followers. And it enrages me, and I have a hard time with that. And I try to be more compassionate. For 50 years of my role as a social worker, I saw myself as being compassionate, but I almost feel because of my cynicism in my old age that I'm losing that sense of compassion. We meditate. I love to meditate. I love to feel the silence that comes along within me with it. But I have a really hard time giving up that anger and resentment to what I experience around me and the hurt that I see people having because of what's going on in this country.
Yeah, I do too, Mel. It's really challenging. Um, and sometimes I have to go to more extreme examples like Umda so I can realize the sort of uncompromising nature of these teachings. And it doesn't mean that I don't feel sick at what's going on in our country. Suddenly, people not being able to talk to people who were their lifelong friends, or, family members being divided over people believing crazy, insane, anti-scientific things. Like, we're being rolled back to some sort of dark age that, anyway, I feel all the things that you feel too. And I feel like, what is the alternative to getting cynical and despairing? We don't really have the luxury of indulging in that for more than, the space of having some feelings, right? And that might be a few days or whatever it takes. But, at some point we're going to have to find a way to live together in peace, or there's really no hope for our survival as a species. Live and work together. And that's why I tell you about Umda, not to make everybody's, everyday obstacles and worries and hindrances seem unimportant. They're not unimportant. But to really see ultimately, what else can we do? These things happen. It's impossible to imagine human beings doing these things to each other. Killing each other, raping each other, throwing babies and children into a fire. I mean, come on. Who does this? Who are they? But they're also human beings, and somehow we have to find a way to live, to have some justice and peace, whether it's through education. One of the things that the refugees asked for was education, and Umda said we wanted to start with the littlest people who could learn, to teach them about peace and justice and friendship, and sharing. And that's why IACT founded this preschool program, Little Ripples. Umda saw we have to start, it has really from the beginning of growing up. So I don't have an answer for you at all. I share your feelings, but I guess what I would say is, don't stay there, Mel. See what else is possible for your heart, okay?
I try. Hillary is the hopeful one. So
Okay.
she helps me with that.
Thank you, Hillary.
But sometimes it's really difficult.
I bet. It is. Sometimes life is really difficult. When I saw Umda, I couldn't have helped myself from sobbing, and just, I've missed Katie J and Gabriel so much, and I loved them so very much. And, you know, I couldn't, I mean, I didn't, I figured he's been in the States a few days. He doesn't mind if people throw their arms around him, which I did. And then I was just like sobbing, and he was too. And he kept saying, "This is the life. This is the life. This is the life." And that is kind of a mantra of life brings all this. Life brings death. Life brings losing our friends. Life brings tragedy as well as joy. And Umda has 5 kids. He knows joy. But this is the life. It brings these things. And it's up to us how we want to work with them or transmute them, or just let ourselves be flattened with despair for a while. But we have to, I was thinking of what my teacher said the other day. I was trying to get into the ocean. Okay, this is a super trivial example, but it's okay. I like to use these teeny examples because you can bring the teachings anywhere. So I was trying to get into the ocean to swim, and the waves, they weren't too big. I won't even try if they're too big. It's too scary and dangerous for me at this stage of my strength and life. But they were very strong, and I think the tide was going out. So anyway, they were just very strong. There was the undertow and then the crashing, and I kept getting knocked down, literally. And I thought of my teacher, Sansini, his teaching. He had these great Dharma sound bites, and it was fall down 100 times, get up 101 times. And sure enough, I kept getting up and trying to get out there, and I did. And I had a beautiful swim out to the buoy. But that's our practice. Fall down 100 times, get up 101 times. What is the alternative?
It's always a pleasure getting information from you and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. It's a real issue. Sochi.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. I guess going back to what you just said about falling 100 times and getting back up 100 times.
101
And
times.
101, 120 times.
One time you're going to stay up, Sochi.
Yeah, right. I hope so. I think just going back to just a little bit earlier when you were mentioning about, I forget who you said mentioned this about what teaches you and if when it's easier, it's hard, right? And I wrote down the things that were hard because I am at this point where I truly believe the hard things really not just teach me, but help me get up in a different way. And I think, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one with this experience, but so I'm recovering from pretty severe PTSD. And where maybe the last 20 years, it's just been hard, right? Like you can't really see the goodness in the same way. And now there are more inklings of goodness, right, that are coming to the fore through this process. And I'm noticing the things, the really hard things, like I helped my father pass away. And that was one of the things that just broke me open, right? And so a really hard thing changed my life. It was the most sacred experience I've ever had, like talking him through that, and like guiding him as far as I could. And I guess it's a big question, but how do you stay with it? How do you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to get up 101 times, right? When it feels like a tunnel for so long and the glimmer is like really far out there. Like, how do you like just staying the course feels like such a challenge over and over and over again.
It is. It is. And I think the way you do it is by having company. I don't think you can do it all by yourself. The way you do it is by coming to sitting group, participating in different groups that comfort or sustain you in different ways, and otherwise I think it's just really hard to keep going. I don't think it's an accident that people who want to devote their lives to practice gather in monasteries or places where there's a community. And when the Buddha was teaching, his community, it was a communal practice. Now, sure, people would go off and do their meditation at some quiet place by themselves, foot of a tree, or an empty room or whatever. But they would all be going on alms round and collecting and sharing food together. I mean, they were living together. So I think that is a way to keep going, because then when you are sort of sagging or flagging or just feeling like giving up, somebody else can keep going and you can get in sort of the tailwind or the slipstream of their effort. Do you know what I mean? I think it's just a really important thing. And you can also, which I'm sure you do and have done, you can open your heart in prayer when you feel completely discouraged. And you've already had the powerful experience of watching this huge sadness, and who knows what your father's role was in not protecting you from the trauma or even inflicting it on you, who knows, but having the ability to be with him in that sacred way and feel blessed by the experience. I mean, who knew, right? So you've got this, Sochi. I know it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have time for one more. Candace.
Hi, Trudy. Thank you for that reply to Sochi. I hear the wisdom in all that. My limitation though is that I can go to groups, online groups, but not anything else because I'm housebound, bedbound, and I have no family or help really or visitors or anything. So it's very extremely challenging. And so the getting up the 101st time is getting pretty hard.
It's exhausting, Candace, and that is challenging to not, when you're feeling isolated, well, you're not even feeling isolated. You are isolated in some way. And if you're housebound and bedbound, you are. And that is tough practice. It's really tough practice. Um, Gosh, I just thought of something I haven't read for probably 40 years. It was a story in, I think it was the Three Pillars of Zen. I'm going to try and find it for you for next time. It was in the Three Pillars of Zen, I think. And it was about a woman in your situation who was housebound, bedbound. I don't know if she had a terminal illness or what, but that was her situation. I think she was kind of a young woman, as I recall, but I'm not sure. It was a long time ago. And she did this intensive practice. And I think she did it in different forms. I mean, this was happening in Japan. So she made paper cranes very mindfully, which are a symbol of longevity and hope. And so she made, strings of cranes, and she practiced meditation very intensively, just right in her bed under her covers. And she'd really devoted most of her awake time to practice. And then she tells the story of really having a kind of powerful experience of awakening, like what Sochi had with her dad. Now, I don't know, of course, your situation, um, but it is possible to do that. But it's only possible to do that when you're not trying to get away or out of the situation. And when you're in a situation of suffering, it's very hard not to try to get out of it or away from it, right? Um, and I don't want to minimize the difficulty of, being in the situation that you're in. Um, and anytime we practice, we fall down all the time. But when you can't actually be in the presence of others and feel that support, can you feel it when you're here online with us? I just feel people sending you metta for being by yourself there, and maybe they'll even put their messages for you in the chat. But can you
Yes, yes,
feel the warmth that comes towards you?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really just soak it up, savor it. Um, it's food for you right now because you really need that to feel that someone is standing with you or lying down with you, as the case may be, and that you're not all alone, even though you may be alone in your room.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for telling me what your situation is and for coming when you can, week after week. And I know you also from another group, and so I just really value your presence, Candace.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's just sit together for a minute. And everybody would just sit together for a moment, but Candace, you look at the chat. Thank you, everybody, for your practice, for your attention, for your dedication in coming to sitting group and doing this together. It's so important to do this together. And then at the end of our time, we offer the goodness of our practice to all beings everywhere, without exception. May we accept that this is the life. This is the life that we've been given. So just coming back full circle to what is your intention for the life. And everybody feel free to unmute yourselves and just say hi, goodbye. And if you can stay for a breakout group, I strongly encourage you to do that. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.
See you next time.
And Carol, goodbye.
Thanks, Trudy.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
I'm going to stick around for the breakout groups, but I'm down, so I'll go off video for a while and I'll come back in. Okay.
Okay, Bob.
Okay,
Glad to hear it,
sounds
Bob.
good. Come back in
Thanks.
about 5 minutes, so around
Okay.
38:40.
Okay,
And we'll get
thanks.
started around then. Yeah.